Hello and Assalamu alaikum. We are group 7. Our group is doing the short story. The short story title is The Mapmaker's Silk. Here is our group member Amirul, Aiman, Fatin, Mustaqeem, and me, Mayan. So let's start with the introduction of the story. The Mapmaker's Silk is a short story about how people see, describe, and define other cultures. It follows Admiral Heller, a Western mapmaker who believes that if you can measure a place and draw it on a map, then you truly understand it. He is sent to map a desert city called Qamar. Before he even arrives, Edmund already has a clear image of the city in his mind. Mystical, exotic, and untouched by modern life. Its imagine comes not from the city itself, but from the Western writing and assumption. So let's continue with the story focus and what's the short story central idea. As Edward starts mapping Qamar, he work slowly shows his basic. He focuses on what looks exotic and ignore everyday life. So instead of showing the real city, his map reflects what the Western expected to see. Through his interaction with Laura, a local woman who guards him, the story highlights the difference between seeing a place from outside and actually living in it. Overall, the story asked a simple but important question: who gets to describe what a place truly is?
Assalamu alaikum and hello, my name is Hariz Aiman, and today I will be presenting the brief overview of the story called The Mapmaker's Silk, and I'll also include the plot development of the story at the end of my presentation. So first, we start with the first chapter called The Man. The first chapter situates the story within the historical lineage of Western men who believed that the world could be controlled, understood, and owned through measurement. Edmund Hill, being the main character of the story, is introduced as a gifted cartographer shaped by colonial ambition and institutional praise. Before ever arriving in the desert city of Qamar, he has already seen it through the Western texts that framed the city as exotic, backwards, and static. Later on, he was enrolled to an expedition to map the city of Qamar. The main takeaway of this chapter is it established mapping as an ideological act, not a neutral one. It highlights how colonial knowledge is formed before contact with a certain culture, revealing that Edmund's gaze or perception is preconditioned by power, entitlement, and fantasy. We move on to the second chapter. It's called The Journey. It is named after Edmund's journey towards the city of Qamar, which often mirrors his intellectual arrogance. Despite minor hardships, he arrives convinced of his preparedness. His first encounter with the city of Qamar immediately disrupts his expectations especially through the introduction of a local guide employed by the government of Qamar, Lale. She is a woman who speaks with authority and wears practical clothing rather than the expected Orientalist costumes. Edmund's internal judgments, however, still persist. This chapter underscores the gap between expectation and reality, showing how deeply ingrained biases resist immediate correction, even when contradicted with lived experience. Now we move on to the third chapter called The City. Qamar in the story is portrayed as vibrant, modern, and alive. However, as Edmund begins his mapping work, his selective attention becomes clear. He emphasizes markets and shadows while minimizing institutions that signify progress and change. It's institutions such as factories, residential areas, and also universities. Lale, in this chapter, observes how his questions and sketches reinforce preconceived narratives and notions rather than reflect the city as it is. The chapter reveals how representation is shaped by choice, what Aiman chooses to include, enlarge, or even omit demonstrates that maps construct meaning rather than merely record. The fourth chapter of the story is called The Truth. Deep into the project, Lale introduces the silk map, an inheritance from her grandmother, a culturally embedded representation of Kamar. Aiman, however, dismisses it as inaccurate, prompting Lale to challenge the notion of objectivity and ultimately withdraw from the project. Her departure marks an open rejection of colonial authority and misrepresentation. The key takeaway from this chapter is it confronts epistemic arrogance, questioning who has the right to define the truth. It exposes the limits of Western rationality when divorced from lived knowledge and accountability. The fifth chapter of the story is called The Day. When he's finally finished with his map, it was unveiled publicly in the streets of Kamar. However, it was immediately rejected by its people. They recognize it as familiar yet false. They claim that it is a fantasy replacing a lived reality. Lale critiques the map, saying that the map does not introduce Kamar to the world. However, it erases it. Aiman's humiliation towards this open rejection deepens his internal conflict. The takeaway from this chapter is it highlights the violence that misrepresentation might cause. It shows how authoritative narratives can silence communities and replace them with consumable images. We move on to the sixth chapter called The Night. A sandstorm rages on the city of Kamar, where it dismantles Aiman's confidence and literal orientation, where he braves through the storm. However, his paper map that he made fails, while the silk map that Lale had given him guides him through lived pathways shaped by human care and memory. He survives not through mastery, but through reliance on the people he once rendered invisible. This chapter marks the transformative climax that colonial knowledge collapses under real conditions, while local knowledge proves essential for survival. And now we finally arrived to the concluding chapter called The Man Changed. Aiman emerges as a man changed. After his experience in the sandstorm, he now practiced humility and restraint in his work. His final map is unfinished, and he openly acknowledges its limitations. He accepts uncertainty and discomforts that the scholars back at his homeland hurled at him, while the silk map remains with Lale, protected, intact, and beyond appropriation. This conclusion affirms that the ethical representation requires incompleteness. True understanding demands listening, humility, and respect for what cannot and what should not be. So, before I end my part, I promise to include the plot diagram of the story. It follows pretty closely to the free text triangle, where it has the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and conclusion. First, the exposition of the story is where the story introduces the two main characters, Aiman and Lale, and the pair's exploration through the beautiful city of Kamar. The rising action can be seen when Aiman is seen depicting Kamar insincerely, resulting in Lale's resignation. The climax of the story is depicted when the people of Kamar revolts against Aiman and his map. And following that incident, where the sandstorm rages on the city of Kamar, almost resulting in Edmund's being lost in a storm by relying on his paper map. The following action happens when Edmund's final escape from the storm by relying on the silk map that Lale had given him, resulting in his Orientalist worldview changing. The conclusion of the story is when the silk map remains with Lale as a symbol or an act of defiance against colonial representation. That's all for my part. I'll hand this presentation to my next part. Bye bye.
So, onto the post-colonial theories that can be found in the story. There are two. The first one is Orientalism. Orientalism is how the Western world represents the East, usually making them look as if the East are inferior. In this story, there are many examples of Orientalism. For example, when creating a map of Kamar, Aiman selectively chose maps that fits the Western expectations rather than what is true. Not only that, he also ignores signs of modernity and intellectual life that can be found in Kamar. These are clear-cut examples of Orientalism in this story. The second theory is feminism. This theory talks about generalizing the experiences of women while not taking account of what is real. For example, in the story, when Aiman met Leila, he was visibly unsettled that a woman has been chosen to be a position of authority. This showcases how the preconceived ideas against women results in feminism tendencies.
In the Mapmaker silks, Aiman and Lale function as symbolic figures that dramatize the power imbalance central to post-colonial critique. Their relationship reflects the tension between Western epistemological dominance and indigenous way of knowing, echoing Aiman's concept of Orientalism. Now that we have a little summary of what is this topic about, it's proper that we talk about the character that exists in this very Aiman, an Orientalist subject. Aiman represents the Western colonial gaze, one that believes knowledge is produced through measurement, categorization, and control. His obsession with borders, accuracy, and permanence reflect a Cartesian worldview that assumes that land exists to be mapped, owned, and explained by Western authority. Although Aiman claims objectivity, his mapping practice reveals deep ideological bias. He selectively records what aligns with pre-existing Western narrative of karma as timeless, mystical, and static, while ignoring signs of modernity such as university, factories, and intellectual debate. This selective vision mirrors side arguments that Orientalism is not about discovering the East, but about producing it in a form that is legible and consumable to the West. Aiman's map does not merely mispresent karma, it replaces life reality with fantasy. His insistence that his map is what readers understand demonstrate how colonial knowledge prioritizes Western audiences over indigenous truth. Thus, Aiman's cartography become an instrument of symbolic domination rather than neutral documentation. Even Aiman's habit of referring to the city as she reinforced colonial possession. The feminization of Kamar reduced the city to an object to be admired, controlled, and penetrated, rather than recognized as a living commodity with agency. This aligns with post-colonial critiques of how colonized lands are gendered and aestheticized to justify domination. Now we will be moving on into our second character, which is Lale, the indigenous knowledge and resistance. In contrast, Lale embodies indigenous epistemology, knowledge rooted in life experience, relational understanding, and adaptability. Unlike Aiman, she does not seek to fix the city into rigid representation. Her silk map, inherited from her grandmother, symbolizes knowledge passed through generations, shaped by movement, memory, and care, rather than conquest. The silk ability to shift under light reflects the fluidity of indigenous knowledge system, which resists singular authoritative meanings that Lale's role as a translator is especially significant. While she initially meditates between Aiman and Kamar, she gradually recognizes the translation itself can become a form of complicity when Western framework dominates interpretation. Her resignation marks a moment of resistance, a refusal to continue enabling mispresentation. This act challenges colonial authority. This act challenges colonial authority and reclaims narrative control, asserting that not all spaces are available for Western's interpretation. Her questions, accurate to whom, directly destabilize the assumed universality of Western knowledge. It exposes accuracy as per political concept rather than a natural one. By retaining the silk map at the end of the story, Lale safeguards a form of knowledge that cannot be fully accessed, consumed, or erased by the colonial system.
Moving on to the next part, I will be explaining the symbolism in the Mapmaker silk. First, Aiman's map represents rigid colonial or Orientalist knowledge. His map only shows what fits in the Western imagination, so Kamar is portrayed as exotic aesthetic. Instead of reflecting how people actually live there, the map is more about controlling how the city is seen. Then we have Lale's silk map, which represents indigenous knowledge. Unlike Aiman's map, it's flexible and based on life experience. It values a connection over ownership, showing that the city is understood through memory, habits, and care. Next is the storm, which is symbolize the collapse of colonial authority. During the storm, Aiman's map completely fails, which exposes the limits of colonial mapping. He is forced to rely on indigenous knowledge instead, showing which knowledge truly help people survive. Blank spaces. These represent resistance. They show that not everything can or should be defined by an outsider. By leaving certain areas blank, indigenous meaning is protected by being erased. Aiman's transformation also shows the deconstruction of his Orientalist worldwide view. His shift from being certain to questioning himself, and from imposing ideas to actually listening. This reflects his growing awareness of the limits of his own perspective. Finally, referring to the city as she reflects as colonial mindsets. It shows how the city is viewed as a possession rather than a living community. This contrasts with the reality of Kamar as a vibrant place shaped by its people.